What was the most shocking thing that you heard the quiet kid say? Nothing. Let me explain. I took a class with Sung Hoi Cho, the Virginia Tech shooter, one semester before the shooting. The class was called Contemporary Horror. It was a one-time elective offered by my favorite professor. We read horror novels and watched horror films and discussed the craft of creating scary stories, but also how they reflected or represented their era's fears. It was a great class. There were only about 15 students, and it was discussion-heavy. Cho was one of them. I honestly never noticed him, even in that small class, until halfway into the semester. He wasn't quiet, he was silent. So on the day we finally noticed him, our professor asked him something directly, and Cho just stared at him. I can't remember the question, but the nature of it meant silence was potentially an acceptable and funny response, so we all laughed, except Cho. He just kept staring at our professor. Our laughter awkwardly died, and after a few moments of uncomfortable silence, our professor just said, "Okay," and moved on. It was so strange, but I forgot about that weird moment until after his rampage. That professor later told me that Cho's papers had been disturbing, but the nature of our course meant the envelope was being pushed a bit, and it had never been bad enough to suggest he'd do what he did. The professor was a good man, and he admitted he struggled with not blaming himself on some level for one, not identifying how severe Cho's mental health problems were, and two, for the graphic and terrible nature of some of what we watched in that class, which may have inspired Cho. He knew that was BS, but a part of him couldn't help but feel some blame. It was terribly sad. Edit. Added the second para. I was best friends with the quiet kid in middle school. It wasn't so much shocking as the stupidest thing I've heard him say. He got this 1,000-yard stare all of a sudden and just said, "I can't remember what color my dog is." In high school, there was this really quiet girl named Grace. She was a pleasant person, but wouldn't say anything more than hi or sorry unless you asked her something. Even then, she'd appear terrified. It was at prom, and I was in the parking lot of the venue we had prom at. I lost a contact and had to run to my car to grab my glasses. In the parking lot, Grace was smiling and walking from her car. She looked at me, laughed, and said, "Ryan," her prom date, "just fingered the F out of me." I still laugh about it to this day. 72 virgins is nowhere near enough virgins for eternity. That's like a week's worth of virgins. Playing rugby, hooker fails completely at line out. Someone shouts jokingly, "Does anyone know any good hookers to replace Patrick?" Quietest guy in the team, never hear him say anything. Maybe Patrick's mom can help. Proceed to fall on floor. Edit. Line out, line in, it's all the same. So this one kid who barely ever said 2 words one day asks the teacher for the time. It was at some after-school thing and there was no clock. The teacher said the classic, "Time for you to get a watch," which for some reason was funny to everyone else. The quiet kid doesn't laugh. He looks the teacher dead in the eyes, and once everyone quieted down, he says, "So are you going to tell me the effing time or what?" We were in like 7th grade. One of my students hardly said a word all year until a couple weeks ago. I was trying to get a group of talkative ones under control, and she had enough. She yells out, "Shut the F up, I'm trying to work, you effing a-holes." Awkward silence followed because I didn't know how to handle the normally studious and quiet one losing it. An annoying friend. "Dylan," quiet kid, "you're so effing stupid sometimes." Dylan. "At least I don't suck massive D all the time." In junior high in the mid-'80s, the game Trivial Pursuit was all the rage. We played it in math class one day, and this kid, Gary, who never said anything at all, totally spanked everyone else by answering every single sports-related trivia question. He got a lot of attention for it, and I believed he walked a little taller after that day. I don't think I ever heard him say anything else, but I did see him sitting on the bleachers at a few sports events. After school, having just shown me the scope for supposedly his sniper rifle, "If the fire alarm ever goes off and you can't find me, don't use the doors as an exit." What if we killed everyone with cancer to stop it from spreading? You finally decide to speak and that is what you go with? We were chilling at a bar in Prague and someone rolled up some hash oil and tobacco and passed it around. The quiet kid hit it and got even quieter. 20 minutes later, some aggressive, growling black metal comes on, and out of nowhere, he yells, "Kill your parents!" We effing lost it. He was pretty happy with himself. The quiet kid from my grade school stood up one day, grabbed a broom, stood on a chair, and began trying to swat bees that got inside. One bee landed on the window, where quiet kid proceeded to yell, "Die, bee, die!" and then swatted and shattered the window. He screeched when it happened and then sat back down. Never heard him speak again. Wow, literally this question came at a perfect time. I was just thinking about this, and it was by far in sophomore year of high school. This kid was so odd that honestly no one ever really noticed him, but one day he's sitting across from me at a table and he sees this one girl in really tight shorts and goes, "God damn, I could have my head up her butt for months." It was pretty shocking. My a-hole is this big, while making a circle with her fingers. Edit. Lots have asked how big it was. It was probably the size of a euro, not too big, not too small, just like Goldilocks a-hole. I'm sure it was just right. And no, unfortunately, I did not check the old turd cutter out. I failed you, Reddit. I'm sorry. I feel like an a-hole. About this big. Quiet kid sneezes. Boy behind her. God bless you. Her. God isn't real. In kindergarten, there was this kid, Donatel, and he never said a word. He was nice enough, played games and everything, but completely silent. One day, we were looking out of the classroom window and a cop drove by. Donatel opens his mouth and says, "Police car." At the time, we were all really excited to hear him speak, but looking back, that kid must have had some real dark history. This douchebag kid who constantly effed with people was in line with the quiet kid and the quiet kid's friend. Quiet kid is a bit overweight, so when he gets up to the lunch lady and gets his chicken nuggets, the douchebag says, "You don't want extra nuggets, big guy?" The quiet kid out of nowhere just starts ranting, "No, I am all set, but what are you up to this weekend? You want to hang out, grab some food, maybe F a bit? I'd like to be on top and you look like a bottom, so what do you say, want to F tonight?" The entire line is dead silent. The douchebag starts getting all peed off and acting like he's gonna start a fight, and the quiet kid says, "Okay, fine, you can be top, baby." The douchebag kid leaves to the entire line laughing their butts off at his expense. No idea if the quiet kid was gay or he just knew that even jokingly suggesting the douche kid was a homosexual would upset him more than anything. But I do know he left the line with his delicious chicken nuggets and a huge smile on his face. In middle school, the quiet kid, Steven, had an arch rival, Robbie. In class, Robbie always seemed to come out on top of their little scuffles, mostly because Steven couldn't really formulate or execute a burn or a comeback. He just rolled over and let Robbie get his insults in until the teacher stepped in. One day I was walking behind Robbie after that class and Steven quietly crept up behind him. Before Robbie could even turn around, he got as close as possible and said, "If I was to come into your house and kill you while you were sleeping, I doubt anyone would even notice." Then he disappeared into the darkness of the science hallway. I don't remember the exact words, but that was pretty damn close. I was about 55% shocked, 30% laughing hysterically on the inside, and 15% terrified. Robbie never made fun of old Stevie again. We sat in the classroom in, I think, 5th grade. My friend had done a PowerPoint presentation about Eminem. He talked about that he lived in a trailer as a young boy. And the quiet straight-A student stands up and says, "Just like you," and asked to use the toilet. No one understood anything of what just happened. We live in Northern Europe. It's practically no one that lives in a trailer here. My friend didn't. Our quiet kid was Tommy. Tommy never said anything ever. Out of all the lunches we ate at our table senior year, I think Tommy was the only one who never told a story or even added anything to the conversation. He always just sat in the same spot along the wall, eating his lunch and laughing occasionally at our jokes. One day we were sitting in the cafeteria eating lunch and sharing stories like we always do. My friend Raymond had spent the previous night with a girl named Haley. She was 2 years younger, but already had a reputation of hooking up with a lot of different guys. So he was telling us everything that went down, kind of bragging, even though nobody was really impressed as we were aware of Haley's reputation. Anyway, Raymond gets done telling his story, then proceeds to pull out his sandwich. I think it was some sort of fish. It didn't look very appealing to Raymond or us, so he says, "This looks disgusting, but I'll give it a try anyways." And he proceeds to take a bite. In pipes Tommy, "Is that what you said about Haley last night?" Everyone explodes into laughter, drawing the attention of the entire cafeteria. Raymond is just sitting there, mid-bite, stunned. I'm bent over in pain from laughing. Others are on the floor. One guy ran into the bathroom because he thought he was going to puke from laughing. Even Raymond had to laugh. I never noticed him laugh, but Tommy had this sly grin on his face the rest of the lunch hour. "Kid, I've never heard you say anything loudly. You need to shout something out." Quiet kid. "What?" Kid. "Shout something." In the middle of a classroom, a full-blow, high-pitched roar is heard. Quiet kid. "Christmas!" It was a Muslim kid who didn't even celebrate Christmas. What a dude. In class, he asked the woman teacher if he could go to the toilet. She sternly replied, "You've got 2 minutes, Richard." And Richard says, "2 minutes? It takes me that long to unravel it." Teacher goes red and everyone loses it. We were having a BS elective course and we ran out of stuff to do, so we wound up having story time. My friend walks up to the front and starts telling us about how he once got pretty badly injured. Basically, he was walking into his friend's house, slipped on some black ice, face planted on it, and his front teeth tore off most of his front lip and broke off. He ran into the house babbling and bleeding. He was like 11 and was missing part of his face, so he wasn't 100% coherent at the time. And his friend's mom takes one look, runs into her bedroom, locks the door, and doesn't do anything until my friend's dad arrives and starts screaming at her. My friend says he still has no idea why the grown adult woman couldn't handle the situation any better, and we all started making guesses and BS psychoanalysis. Cue the quiet kid raising his magnificent head and blessing us with enlightenment. Maybe she just needed to finger herself real quick. He started to attack someone in my class with a table when the teacher got a cup of coffee. That was quite something. One thing I always say as a quiet guy is whenever people are talking about me within earshot, they usually say something like, "That Mixmaster Bone, he just never talks." Then I say, "No, but I hear everything." They all just kind of laugh awkwardly and slither away. I think it's weird how my lack of conversation is such a huge conversation starter. Edit. Spelled my name right. Someone once turned to me and said, "Dude, you're always so quiet, like a serial killer or something." I immediately responded, "Thank you." Looks of shock and horror as I realized what I said. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.